What's good, y'all? Welcome to another Anything by Mansa Cannon. I'm Mansa, and today I'm really excited to have a lady on who I've been really wanting to bring on because she's in an industry that's really cool, makes a difference in pretty much all of our lives, matters in all of our lives in its own way if you know how to reach out to her and frankly get her assistance. I feel that there's going to be a lot of people interested in learning how they can become the next Bovara, because I know that what she does is so cool and so common, yet so commonly forgotten as a great job to take on, that once you hear this, you're going to want to stay tuned in. So today, the woman that I have on, is a person who is the vice president of wealth management for one of the largest financial firms in the country. Now, you know how I do. I'm not going to say the name of the company, but nonetheless, it is. And I really hope that you all gain a lot from this. I know today's interview is going to be amazing because she's an amazing person. And how do I know this? Because not only is she my friend, but she was in my leadership accelerator course that I was in for the Cincinnati Chamber called Sea Change. And we did a lot of great work, our whole cohort, and that's class 14, the best class period. So without further ado, let's get straight to it. Okay, so how you doing, Bree?
I am so happy to be here, Mario. I can't tell you how excited I am to be here. It's an honor.
Okay, perfect. I have to ask the number one question, which allows me to be able to interview, which is, do you like your job?
It's a good question. If I'm being totally honest, I absolutely love it. I started my career in public accounting, which was not the right personality fit for me. So I'll tell you, undergrad, I got my accounting degree, went forth and got my MBA. So like you, I'm a former college athlete and was offered a grad assistant position to go right ahead and get my MBA. So I jumped on that opportunity. And I spent 6 years studying a degree that I thought, oh, this is like really challenging for me in the classroom. And I loved that. And then when I went to go actually accept that position as an accountant and go through tax season and go through audit work, I realized it just didn't align with my personality. A lot of it was, for me, it was a lot of plugging information into a system, not having a ton of context around what I was doing. And it wasn't enough people work at the very beginning of that career path. Not to say that it's not for other people, but I love working with people. And I initially thought that maybe getting into a sales role would make a lot of sense because I kept saying, I want to be more with people. I want variety in my workday. I want, my schedule to allow me to be out in the community. And somebody approached me and said, why don't you come work in wealth management? And my gut instinct was, I don't want to work for a bank. That sounds boring.
All right, before we get there, let's just pause right here because we're going to get to that soon enough, because you've mentioned several positions that I definitely want you to articulate a little bit deeper on. But before we get there, before we stay in the future and the present, what was the first job that you remember ever wanting to have? Mind you, it does not have to be, it can be ridiculous. It can be ridiculous. What was the first job you remember as a child ever wanted to have?
It's funny. The very first job that I remember, like as early as I can remember, I wanted to be a teacher. So I always had a classroom in our basement of the house I grew up in. I'm one of 5 kids. So guess who my students were? My siblings. My poor 3 younger siblings would have to sit in my classroom and I would write on the chalkboard and teach them all of the things that they needed to know. And the reality was I just loved writing on the chalkboard.
Well, that's better than you just love telling people what to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Well, what was the transition into college? Because obviously you went to college for finance, specifically accounting.
Yep.
But nonetheless, it's in the finance industry.
Yep.
So what happened in between the time period in which you wanted to be a teacher and you going to college and having a specific industry focus?
So I was actually in college during the Great Recession, the housing crisis, which really hurt a lot of families. People lost their homes. Many lost, big portions of their investment portfolios, their retirement accounts. And one of the pieces of advice that my dad gave me, who is in the concrete business as a small business owner, he said, do something that is recession proof, because he was getting hit really hard. Because if you think about it, people weren't going to, be working on their homes, paying for driveways and new sidewalks and new patios when they were struggling financially. So for him, he saw it firsthand, like, okay, well, how is our family going to survive? How will my business survive during an economic crisis? So he passed that on to me, of course, while I was going to school, to say, do something that's recession proof. And I was so emotionally impacted by what I saw my parents going through that I wanted to do something that was safe. Mm-hmm. And for me, that was accounting. Accountants always will have a job. We'll always need CPAs because we'll always need to file tax returns. Taxes will always exist. And so that was really my focal point for getting my accounting degree. Not because I was passionate about it, not because I loved it. I enjoyed the challenge in the classroom. I knew that. But I kept hearing my dad in the back of my mind saying, do something that's safe, do something that is recession proof. And that stuck with me.
So the awareness, though, of the industry, the awareness of the degree, where did that come from?
Really, it came from actually my academic advisor in college. So it wasn't nobody prepped me for it in high school to say, here's what an accountant does. I did take a business class in high school. And actually, now that I think about it, that was my first kind of exposure to what is out there at a very high level. And he taught us to balance checkbooks, and he taught us about the stock market and how to invest in certain stocks based on what we liked as consumers. So at a very, very simple level, if you love Xbox, he would say, okay, well then we're going to invest in Microsoft, and it would be, we'd be pretend investing, but it allowed me to see what that functionally was. And then also learn that people actually have jobs that are related to that. So that was probably my very first exposure to balancing a checkbook. And I'm a little obsessive compulsive. And so to me, balancing a checkbook was really fun, which then led me to think, oh, I might like accounting because it's numbers based. And it really is kind of like balancing a big checkbook for a business. So I would say the specific accounting options actually were shown to me in college from my academic advisor as a student athlete.
When you're saying the options, are you saying the roles and opportunities that will come from that degree?
Yes.
Huh. Well, that's very valuable, because sometimes you don't get that from advisors. Well, I guess depends on who your advisor is.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, do me a favor and break down what exactly an accountant does, because they do significant things, especially at certain times of the year, at certain times of the month, and whether it's for a person or a business. Can you explain to people what actually accounting is? And
yes.
I'll follow up after that, of course.
Yes. So you either go into tax work. So when you make money, you also have to, it's a beautiful thing to make money, but you have to pay taxes. The government requires it of you. And so, unfortunately, but many of our taxes go to fund great things like bridges and roadways and different programs for individuals. And so it's a good thing, but we don't always love having to pay them. So most people don't really know how to track, well, how much do I owe at the end of the year? You have to pay taxes every year. How much do I owe at the end of the year? And so tax accountants collect all the information you receive from your bank, from your employer, or maybe from your business that you run. And they say, okay, here's how much money you made, and here's how much money you owe for taxes. So once a year, during busy season or tax season, typically it's April 15th. The accountants file and help their clients pay that bill. On the flip side, you can work on the audit side, and that is actually helping businesses sort of stay on the up and up, or stay in alignment with compliance and making sure that their systems are all in check. As an auditor, you sort of get a bad rap because you're like a nuisance. You're a little annoying to the business owner. You're collecting a ton of information, but the reality is you're really trying to help them improve their systems and make sure that everything is, in alignment with how it should be from a business standards standpoint.
So I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it even more because you did 2 callbacks for previous interviews, which is we obviously had an auditor, Courtney Branch. So go back and check his interview out. And we also had a corporate attorney who broke down the significance of being able to know different laws that will help you. Because you mentioned the end of the year, you're paying, or better yet, April 15th, you're paying your taxes, you're figuring out everything that went on throughout that year. But there's also those parts where there's write-offs, ways to not have to pay all these high price taxes that some people don't necessarily need to do, because there's certain rules and laws that will accommodate that. And that's something I'm sure you also know as well. And I know CPAs go deeper into these conversations, but I know this is something that...
Yes, and this is why I exited that business, because I have no interest in the nitty gritty of those. However, there are lots of professionals who specialize in that. But that was really where I think I discovered about myself that I needed more people work and less being drilled down into the numbers all day, every day.
I want to run back to college real quick. Was there any particular class that stands out the most as like one of the most valuable classes that you had for what you've done throughout your professional career?
I actually took two stand out. My communications class, which with amongst all of the student athletes, it was like, oh, communications, that's an easy A, like take it, it's an easy one. You can get that as a gen ed off of your checklist. It's just one of those college requirements that you can supposedly easily get through. And what I discovered was I'm so self-critiquing that it was a really difficult class for me, because you would watch yourself present and I'd sit back and be like, oh my gosh, like this is embarrassing. This is the way you look when you talk, or you said that word incorrectly, or you didn't even, that phrase didn't make sense where you were throwing it. And for me, it was the most beneficial and influential class because I use it now every day. And I think the communications piece, everyone uses. I don't care if you're a pharmacist, if you're an auditor, if you are a sales rep, if you're a financial advisor, you use that. So that was impactful to me because I thought it was going to be one of those like easy A's. And although I got an A, it was like one of the hardest A's I've ever worked at, because it was a class that I'm like, this is so important to any career. And so I put a lot of pressure on myself to do well.
Well, don't feel too bad, because at least you didn't make the mistake that I made, which was I had taken enough hard classes. I just wanted an easier quarter. I had my core classes. And, you know, core classes, frankly, when you get in your core classes, it's a lot more easier because it's something you're passionate about. They're not all deep into the gen ed conversations.
Yeah.
But where I messed up was I knew I needed a science class, and I read cameras, lenses, and something else. And I got so excited about this. Like, oh, I want to take that class. Yeah, it was a physics class.
Oh, hell no.
Yeah, and somehow
Mm-mm.
I ended up in there, and I, of course, just luckily had a class that I needed to get out of, not in a good way. It was like, yeah, I want to get out of this class. And my credits to be eligible required me to stay inside of the physics class.
No.
Yeah. I got a C. I was so proud of that C. I worked so hard for that C. Oh
Well,
my God. Now that is.
can I tell you though, I actually have a similar story. So the second it's not my favorite class, but it was a lesson learned. I thought actually I was going to go down the physical therapy path. So it was my first semester of college and it was intro to biology. I also got a C in that. And I also realized how much I disliked science and that I wanted nothing to do with that world. And that was my like fail faster moment of, oh my God, I suck at this. But also it quickly led me to realize this is not what I want to do. Mm-hmm. It's not the path that I want to take. And that is one of my favorite classes to date because it allowed me to show myself, okay, you were meant for this other path.
Yeah. So if you all have watched some of my side videos, you've heard me use the term fail faster. But before I say this, because we're going to dig into this for a quick second as well, communications, also previous interviews, you'll notice that a lot of people who aren't in communication spaces stress the significance and the value of that communication class that they've taken because it just frankly crosses over. And for me, I believe, and I stand by this, if you're in college, you're going to take a lot of unnecessary classes, throw some valuable classes in there. What are some valuable classes? If you're going to get a job, every job is a business. So take a business course. You're going to have to handle money. Take some type of finance class. You're going to have to make sure that you're able to at least sell yourself. Take a marketing class.
Professional selling. Yes.
Yeah. This allows you to become valuable to your organization because you have at least some level of understanding. You're not going to have a high level. It's not a major or minor. I would stress to get a minor in one of those. Also, of course, IT, all those other things. But that communication course shows up frequently as one that is valuable. And I really did enjoy doing my public speaking. I think mine was public speaking, though. Nonetheless, you brought up fail faster. And my side videos, that if you've been watching, I say fail fast a lot. But she just said it. So sometimes it's hard to be a prophet in your own land. So you need somebody else to come in and say this. So please break down for the audience because you're talking about being in school and you're talking about failing. And school teaches you that to fail is bad and you shouldn't do that. So what does fail faster mean?
So you guys heard me talk about, okay, I was looking at being a physical therapist. I don't know where or why that came in, but really the advice came from my dad after I took that first biology class and I hated it. Mm-hmm. And this is where he kind of stepped in and was like, well, if you're going into business, do something that is recession proof. Okay. And so I knew I liked numbers and I knew I liked math. I was exploring the business world. Of course, after going to school for 6 years, I went into public accounting because it felt like the right thing to do because I just invested 6 years of my life studying accounting. So my first position professionally was a staff accountant here in Cincinnati at a regional firm in public accounting. And to be honest, it was a new city for me. And it did help me get my foot in the door with this community because I had that 6 years of schooling in accounting. It was a much easier way to get into that career and learn about myself. And within the first 12 months, and it was actually much less, that I knew I'm not going to be in this space very long. It was my first tax season that all I wanted to do was go with the HR director on campus recruiting visits, because I wanted to be with people and I wanted to tell them about, culturally how the firm was and what we do as accountants. I was doing anything to avoid actually doing the accounting work. So that told me something, right? But what it felt like was a total failure. I felt like I just spent 6 years lying to myself that I wanted to be an accountant. And then basically I got into it and that I was giving up too soon. So my goal was to do a 4-year stint in public accounting. And I'll tell you, a year later, I realized this isn't for me. Ooh. So that was my moment of, I felt like a failure. And then when I pivoted into wealth management, which was through a friend and me being very transparent about my struggles with my current profession, they connected me with someone in wealth management. And I went into that like informal interview saying, I have to be honest. I don't know that I want to be in wealth management, but I know I want to work more with people. I want to be involved in the community and I really need some variety in my day. Mm-hmm. And they took a step back and they're like, well, I think you're really going to like our industry. So failing faster got me to where I am now in the wealth management space, which fast forward 7 years, I absolutely love it.
All right. So the quick rewind, I know that we've been bouncing all over this place, but everyone's keeping up. But for clarity, you got your bachelor's in accounting and you turned around, you got your MBA. We never mentioned that. Since you got your MBA, do you feel like that was necessary, or did you just feel like it was a good shiny credential to acquire that will help you get jobs in the future? What was the intention behind that?
It was opportunistic of me because I was offered a grad assistant position. So it was completely paid for. I'm one of 5 kids. Mm-hmm. And what my goal was to leave without any student loan debt. And when this grad assistant position came available, I took the opportunity. I didn't think about whether or not it made sense, if the timing was right, if I should have experience before doing it. I just took the opportunity to not have student loan debt. And I do not regret that one bit. Now, if circumstances were different and I didn't have the free schooling portion of it, sure, I would say, hey, get some experience under your belt first and then go get your MBA, because you have more real life knowledge to apply it to the program. But it was opportunistic of me. That's why I went that path.
I had to ask a question like that because I'm starting to see a lot of similarities between the two of us. Because first off, I did go to grad school with a graduate assistantship as well. And in the process of doing that, I found out about it. Somebody just let me know about it as well. And I didn't have an immediate plan of the degree that I wanted for my master's. All I knew was a quote from one of the prophets, who at this point is a fallen one, but I'm not going to say his name, was the concept of school seems so secure. And it was like, do I really want to graduate right now and go straight out to this world that is probably not going to welcome me with a bag of money? No, right. I don't. I want to become a counselor. Counseling was closed, but I had free money sitting here for me. Oh, by the way, I wasn't an RA. I can't remember the actual term. But I was in charge of RAs.
Yeah. I was in the housing department too. That's so funny.
Yeah. But the catch is I didn't have, there was also an ARC. I was an ARC, assistant resident coordinator.
Yeah.
But I wasn't one that was in charge of the RAs. Everyone my title were. I was in charge of more of the discipline aspects that we did once a week. I had my own office. because it was housing. They paid for my housing. They paid for
Yes.
food.
Same.
Me and education. So yeah,
Yep.
I go to school. Don't worry. That's at least one free year. It was not a free year. It was a lot of work. And I got a degree in sociology, which I love, I appreciate, but I did want to get my degree in counseling, but they were closed at the time. Wish I would did a little bit more research. I would have probably went more the business side, if I'm honest. But I'm saying also to say that it's valuable to recognize that sometimes we decide to choose our career because we've done all this work and we didn't accept the lesson in the process of the failing, which is, hey, maybe this isn't our interest. You got your degree and you decide to go ahead and go into this field because you did all that work. I did the same thing. I loved it, burnt me out, but I'm back in this way, doing it my way, because I learned from my past experiences. But okay, I want to run to the fact of you went straight to private. You mentioned wealth management, but I seen that you were a private banker. And you didn't mention that at any point. Is that blurring into one of these titles, or what? Where does that fall in there?
Yeah. So private banker, I lump into the wealth management realm. So I got into this space by being a specialist on the team. So kind of the way we approach wealth management. My title now is basically a fancy title for a financial advisor. And we essentially work with people who have a lot of financial complexity because they're a corporate executive or because they're a privately held business owner, or maybe they inherited a lot of wealth unexpectedly. So they need help with their financial plan or their investments or their banking. And I give you that context because right now in my role as a wealth advisor, a financial advisor, I build a team of specialists for my clients to make sure we're handling all of their financial needs. On that team is a private banker to handle the banking piece, which is opening a checking account, facilitating a wire, helping someone purchase a home or do a refinance. And so at the time, that was my way of gaining a better understanding of this industry. And as the private banker, I was on teams with multiple other financial advisors. So it allowed me the exposure to different types of clients and then different types of advisors and the way they address client concerns, the way they have their own personal philosophy around investments or financial planning. And it really helped for me to craft my own philosophy and the way that I now approach clients. So that's where I started, was as a private banker.
Okay. Do you mind breaking down, because people use this word a lot in our country, the banking industry, your banker, the bankers. What is a banker?
Sure. So a banker, like many industries can mean a lot of things. And I didn't realize how big and how deep banking is until I worked for a bank within a bank, essentially. And so, you have tellers. You go into a branch and you have tellers who are there to cash your check or deposit it for you into your checking account or open a savings account for you, issue you a debit card, issue you a credit card. Bankers can mean that in a branch, in a retail space. Bankers can also mean, corporate or commercial bankers who are actually lending money to businesses so they can facilitate their operations. Bankers can also be people on my side of the house that it's basically a concierge system where if somebody has enough money with the bank, we're relationship based and we make things a little bit easier for them by assigning them their own banker that they can go to for their own personal needs. So there are so many layers to it, but my God, that's I think that's the point you're getting at. So many opportunities.
Yes. All right. I really want to go ahead and get straight to the wealth advisor conversation. But before we really do that, I have to ask, how much did your degree play a role in you getting hired? And is there a degree that's required for one to, first off, get into the industry and build yourself up? Mind you all, she said one of the most understatements of this year, which was she has a shiny title. She's the vice president. So yeah,
there are many vice presidents in banking, but yes, I appreciate that.
I just want to point out that the title was a lot shinier than she made it sound. If I said this thing is glossy and then I pulled it out and it was a huge diamond opposed to me talking about some glass, you'd be surprised. Anyways, yeah, what was the actual degrees was there a degree that was required for this role?
So I'll tell you that what I've noticed about our industry, and I could speak to my firm specifically, we look to recruit people with potential. And so my degree is in accounting. It's not in finance.
But you did with numbers. You did.
But I dealt with numbers. It helped. I think it helped in getting me the conversation because people like to see an accounting degree. I think it's a door opener. But what we look for is people who can be technical, have the ability to be technical, but also are relationship based. Because if you think about it, people open up to us about their finances. That's a very personal thing. You know, talking about money historically has been taboo. And what I'm trying to do is normalize the conversation. But the reality is, in order for people to really open up about their money, they have to trust you first. So if you don't come off as authentic, trustworthy, reliable, relationship based, you're not going to win your client's business. And so we look for people who have those traits. Those are not traits that you can, get experience in, but you can certainly, inherently have them, or, you can learn them over time. And my point is, we just hired someone on my team who has an engineering degree and nothing to do with finance. But guess what? He has proven that he can be technical, but he also has shown in his interview process that he has the ability to listen and execute and be relationship based. So I wouldn't say that there's any one specific degree that would get you into finance or wealth management. But if you are someone who is just inherently curious and someone who builds relationships easily and authentically, I would say you could be successful in our business.
But you do need a college degree, though.
You do need a college degree. And what I would say is not all positions at the bank require a 4-year degree. My position did. And as a private banker, it required a 4-year degree. And I think that only helps kind of position you for higher positions if you have that. The master's is not required, but it's certainly something that was helpful to me. But really the bigger layer is as you get more serious in your career in finance or in wealth management, they're going to look for credentials, different licenses, different, there's the certified financial planner designation. That's the CFP. There's the chartered financial analyst position or certification. That's the CFA. I have CPWA. It's certified private wealth advisor through Chicago Booth. So
I was going to mention that one. That's a big time school, by the way, if you all never heard of it. That's a significant school she just mentioned.
And it's something that I think firms and wealth management institutions look for in their advisors, but it's not something that you have to necessarily have right away. most companies will support you to get those designations, and they'll pay for it if you're working under someone. So the 4-year degree is essential. Maybe not at all firms. I can only speak to mine. The 4-year degree is sort of bare minimum, but I would say even if you don't have a finance or an accounting degree, you still would be able to consider this space so long as you have some of the other traits that I discussed.
But it does sound like, since you mentioned the two that I was gonna mention, those are really good degrees that will help you, frankly, personally, just understand what you're getting yourself into, give you some essential prerequisites that will allow you to not have to relearn, or not just relearn, but learn something from scratch. Correct?
Yep.
So finance,
yeah, absolutely.
something dealing with
those would set you up for success. And to be honest, I mean, when I look at my accounting degrees, accounting is the language of business. And you'll learn that in every high school or college class. It is how fundamentally how organizations track income, expenses, profits. And so I don't think it's ever a bad idea to learn more about accounting. It's just a matter of, you know, can you muster your way through 4 years of it?
Hey,
I think taking a couple classes is better than taking none at all.
And if you need to learn a little bit more about accounting, this season we have Isaac Hendricks, who's already done an interview. Go back and watch that. At this current moment, it literally isn't up, but at the moment that you're watching it, it is. So go ahead and back and watch the actual breakdown, because I've had an accounting on this year that actually is speaking exactly about what you're talking about. So that's great. That's great. All right, we're talking about wealth advising. We're talking about wealth management. We're talking about financial advisors. We're talking about people who are going to teach you about your money. There's a lot of titles. What's the deal with that? What's the difference in the titles? Because I've heard of a financial advisor. I've heard of a wealth advisor. I've heard of a wealth manager. What are we doing here?
We are overcomplicating things.
There's coaches too. Yeah, coaches.
We're overcomplicating things really for no reason. That's what we do in our industry. We have too many acronyms, too many terms that mean the same thing. And so a wealth advisor is a wealth management advisor, is a financial advisor. And so it may mean different things at different firms, but for the most part, those titles are going to pretty much be the same. So if you're working for a smaller firm, and you know, I can't really define what smaller means, but let's say it's about a group of employees of less than 20 people. Okay, let's just say that's what a smaller firm means. There may be your financial advisors, your wealth advisors, your wealth management advisors, all meaning the same thing. They may have more responsibilities to their clients because there may not be as many resources that they can tap into from a team standpoint. So what is good about that is, as someone who's new in the industry, as a financial advisor, you might get a lot more experience because you're expected to do a little bit more. Maybe you're expected to do more of the investments, more of the financial planning, more of the preparation for the meetings. As the organizations get larger and you have access to maybe some more resources, the way my organization operates is I essentially am the quarterback of the team. I'm running point, and then I bring in my specialists, my investment specialist, my financial planner, my private banker as needed. And so then they help me support that client and execute on the strategies. So, you know, every institution defines my role a little differently. But I think all those titles, we can come to the conclusion that they all pretty much mean the same thing.
Yeah. Okay. So I interviewed somebody earlier this year who worked for a mutual fund. He worked for there's what you got? Edward Jones out there. You have Northwestern. You have all these other type of organizations that are constantly trying to recruit talent as well as get clients. There's two things that I have related to this question. First off, I want to know what's the major difference between what you do and what they do.
So,
because you actually work for a bank. They don't work for banks.
Right. So it really depends on the scope of what they're doing. Let's assume like Northwestern Mutual, for instance, that they're working for Northwestern Mutual and they have their own kind of firm under that brand or that umbrella. I believe the way Northwestern Mutual works is that their advisors lift out their own teams. They have access to the resources and the research and the investment data that Northwestern Mutual provides, but they can set sort of their own thresholds. So when I say that, I mean, I don't have control over my asset threshold that I can accept for an incoming client.
Asset threshold means what?
So where I work, they basically define the private bank in saying, if I can work with somebody who has $2 million in assets or more. And so if someone doesn't bring me to manage for them $2 million in assets, I can't take them on as a client, but I can shift them over to a different tier at the bank that's known as preferred banking. Some of these other institutions don't have defined asset thresholds. It's based on like what the individual team defines as what their focal point is. So there might be some more fee flexibility. I can't really adjust fees on my own. It's just kind of, here's what we charge the clients. It is what it is. Like I can be a little bit nimble based on the client and the relationship, but I'm not calling those shots. I do operate my own sort of practice within the institution, but I'm still tied to their parameters, whereas other firms might have some more flexibility around what they define it for fees and for the clients that they work with.
Okay. Well, you mentioned client twice, and that was the second question. Because one of the things that they stressed that they loved most about when they worked there, because they actually ended up leaving that company, was the fact that they were taught how to hunt, how to go acquire customers. Mm-hmm. How do you acquire customers, clients, and frankly, who are your clients? Because you work for a large organization, so your clients could be an entire business. It could be owners, it can be individuals. Both of those questions are the ones that I want answers for.
Yeah, so the business development piece or the hunt is the hardest part.
Yep.
I mean, it is, especially when we're talking about this $2 million threshold, right? So who has $2 million laying around and doesn't already have an advisor? So what I try to do is really foster and pour into my existing clients to the point where they want to refer me to their friends and family. I do sometimes get lucky where I'm, in the community and out and about and explaining what I do. And someone just happens to say, hey, I actually just sold my business. I have some liquidity on the sidelines right now. Liquidity meaning cash that I could potentially manage. Let's talk. And that's sort of rare, but it kind of is all about casting a wide net and being out in the community, letting people know what you do in a variety of ways. For me, it's been some social media push out with our good friend Stevie Carr, and it's just getting that overall brand exposure out there so people know what you do and the type of clients that you work with. So if and when they need you, they come to you. So it's that constant brand awareness that you need to push out. And you hear the word networking all the time. And I think it's gotten sort of a bad rap, just thinking about these awkward happy hours and going to these silly, what we call rubber chicken dinners, where you're sitting at a round table with a bunch of people you don't really know or care to spend time with, and you're all buttoned up. The reality is you don't have to do any of those things if you just get exposure through other areas that you're passionate about.
Absolutely. I do have
So
one coming up in 2 weeks though.
what's that?
I do have one of those rubber chicken dinners.
Oh my
coming up
God.
in 2
I'm
weeks.
so over them. And honestly, I think after COVID, everyone else like got real with themselves and they're like, yeah, we don't like these either. So they're definitely slowing down. I'm doing more golf outings now.
I can see that. I can see that. Well, unless you still want to keep going, but I definitely want to get a little bit more clear. So we're talking about individual people or your clients.
We are, yeah. So that's kind of the next layer of this. I work with the business owners, the individuals, and how the finances feed into their personal picture, right? So I may be working with a business owner of XYZ company, and I'm meeting with him as the CEO or her as the CEO, and then I'm meeting with whoever their partner may be. And then I'm meeting with their kids, which is the next generation. And how do we talk to the kids about money and what money may or may not come to them? What does the legacy look like for mom and dad, the business owner? Are we charitably inclined? Do we want to contribute or donate money to philanthropies or nonprofits that we're really, really passionate about? What is the legacy? What's the retirement plan? Do we want to sell the business? Do we want to pass the business on to kids? Like, I'm talking with them through all of these different plans with my team. Of course, those are the real smart people. And ultimately, we're just helping them execute on whatever they decide to do. I'm just sort of facilitating and saying, here are your options. And then they're saying, I want to go with option A. And then I help them get that done.
Okay. Well, you are a great person to ask this question because first off, we're basically the same age. You've acquired your title at our age, and people looking in can be like, how'd you become a VP at such a young, quote unquote, young age? And I think that there's that I want to point out is the fact that you are a person that's become a leader in your industry at an age maybe others wouldn't expect you to get there. But there's also the part of the value that you bring. There's a hidden value that shows up that many people don't recognize. And I would love for you to speak on this as well, which is many times people think of the financial advisor they want to reach out to, who's the person with the gray hair, that's going to be able to tell them all the secrets, have all the great connections, the insider trading information to out their portfolio to go over the top. But here's the catch. If you're looking for a wealth advisor at 25 or 30, do you really want a guy who's 60, 70 years old and about to retire? Or do you want somebody who's going to be sharp and around for your lifespan? And it seems like you're that perfect person because, as you mentioned, you're now crossing over not only to the parent, but to their kid. So
yeah,
can you speak to the value of youth and also, just speak to the value of youth in your position and working with somebody like you who's not necessarily with all the grays because you aren't that old.
There's huge opportunity for not only young advisors because of what you just mentioned, but female advisors. There aren't a lot of females in this space, and I'm really working hard to try to change that. Most financial advisors are male, 86%. And in getting back to kind of the first comment around there's opportunity for young advisors, there's a huge asset transfer that's happening. It's in the trillions of dollars. And actually, women are set to control about 30 trillion of that asset transfer over the next 10 years.
How?
So
That's a lot. So how is
$30 trillion.
are they getting this transfer just by?
This is through, on average, women live longer than men. So this is maybe them outliving their spouses, life insurance proceeds, or inheriting IRAs, inheriting retirement accounts. Sorry, I just use an acronym. This is due to dual income households more than ever. More women are elevating in their career. And what's happening is, as people are passing away, unfortunately, money is changing hands. And that is the projected amount that women are set to control because of all of those factors. It's not just women, right, that are going to be taking on a lot of this money, but there's next gen too, as people pass away and our bedside manner isn't that great in finance. We usually project to kill our clients off at age 90. That's just kind of the average way we look at our cash flow projections. But when you look out at these numbers in the age of the population, money is changing hands, and it's changing hands quickly. And I've just kind of looked around and noticed a lot of times you see one side of the equation at the table, and oftentimes it's the male. And there hasn't been a setting that is super comfortable for the female. And so what I've tried to do is push the envelope on the traditional wealth management approach, which is typically in a big conference room, in a marble, white room that is filled with people in suits. And I've kind of said, hey, I think the most meaningful conversation is after a spinning class with a glass of wine in hand and with a ball cap on, because people feel like they can be themselves and talk about the most vulnerable topic out there, which is their finances. And so it's been, go ahead.
For clarity, I want to make sure that when you said, because we're talking about allowing women to get into this industry, which is something that you mentioned. Yep. You're saying the part that makes it difficult for women to be in these spaces are essentially that they're being forced to be a standout person in the room. It's a room full of suits, and you're
outnumbered
individual. What is it that's making it uncomfortable? Because I know you mentioned bringing the wine and just after a spin class and it being natural for the client, but where does that cross over for the person who wants to be you?
Yeah, so I think it over the course of 7 years of me being in the industry, I sort of followed suit, no pun intended, just, suit and tie, pin on, whatever. And that's just kind of our
quote on. If you all don't see her right now, you're just listening.
But I have it's like a cardigan. It's like a super comfy. And by the way, I literally have joggers on with like these sneaker looking shoes right now. So I met with 2 clients today like this. This is Bree. This is who I am. This is how I'm most comfortable. And clients pick up on that. And for, let's call it 6 years, I sort of just followed in the path of, well, what's everyone else doing? And after COVID, and we got to really see clients in a different light because we were meeting with them virtually, I realized God, Brie, your advisory style is so much more natural when you feel like you in yoga pants and a ball cap in a normal setting. And I actually picked up on that. I was mirroring their energy. I picked up on that. They were also more comfortable like that. So I said, well, why can't we do this when we all get together? So I met with a client today. She was in her tennis skirt and a Lululemon zip up and a ball cap. And we sat out here, I brought her downtown. She still came and met me at the same space, but it was a different vibe. And that's kind of that's what I'm going for to encourage women in this space. Like, be yourself, be authentic. You will attract people like you and they will love you for it. And just challenge the wealth management norms. Like, it it doesn't have to be stuffy. It doesn't have to be overly complex. We tend to make it that way, and that's not how it needs to be.
And I really appreciate that route of making sure the client feels comfortable, as well as allowing people to recognize how they can make their clients comfortable, because of the fact that it's similar to finding your own personal care doctor, your own physician. You want them to care about you. Like, this is something actually more than a doctor. Your finances is one of the most intimate conversations you can have with another person. So to be able to connect with this person and them not just be this person who makes you feel uncomfortable and makes you feel like you're not qualified to understand your money while they're talking to you. I think that having that type of relationship, having that type of connection allows the conversation to feel more natural, allows the person to have an easier time hearing something, because sometimes it is a little bit of not just between the ears, but right here, right above the nose, the eyes. We're seeing things, and we're maybe selectively hearing the actual value that we could be able to articulate, but we see this person in front of them thinks, oh, they're better, they're stronger, they're smarter. I can never learn to know that. It's like, no, just listen closer and take the information in, and you belong here. I really appreciate that. I would like to know, since we're hitting the tail end, you mentioned 2 million threshold. What are, if you can share, what are common things that you're hearing and learning about how these millionaires and how millionaires have acquired their wealth? Because many people think that they have to become athletes, entertainment, hit the lotto, but that's not true. There's so much money out there and way more millionaires than many people recognize, probably even in their neighborhood. So can you speak to that for me?
Yeah, well, first of all, most of my clients, and even ones that I would consider ultra high net worth over 25 million, are most of them are very, very unassuming people. They're not flashy, they're not driving the nicest car, they're not living in the mansion in Miami like you would think. They're doing things quietly. And some are, and there's nothing wrong with being flashy, but there's a lot of unassuming wealth in this city, in Cincinnati. I also wasn't sure, how I would like working with people who had so much money. And what I realized was a lot of these people came from nothing and built their way to that point. So I met with someone today that he estimates his business value at $500 million. Ooh. 500 million. And he started the company on his own, by the way, with $5,000 to his name. And I asked him literally that question this morning. What do you attribute your success to? And he sort of was like, I don't really know. And so when we got into it, it was the work ethic and the people. He busted his tail day in and day out. And he built a solid team around him to help him execute, knowing his weaknesses and knowing his strengths. And the other piece that he said to me was, if you're only driven by money, you're in it for the wrong reason and you won't be successful. And that really resonated with me. Like, message is, you got to be passionate about what you're doing. The money will follow, right? You have to, you have to make money. That's it. We all need to pay our bills. But if you're really passionate about something and you're really honing into your strengths, money will follow. It can't be the focal point though. And I thought that was really, really cool coming from someone who is valued at $500 million.
Okay. Well, you mentioned some other things talking about the wealth transfer. So I want to definitely bring those up to learn where they fall in this conversation, which is, many people hear about life insurance, and there's a lot of people stressing getting life insurance and how it can help with building second generational wealth and being able to make sure your family is able to survive after you leave, but at the same time putting them in a much better position. And you have movies that crack those jokes about having $1 million life insurance, but it's very possible for a person who, let's say, makes 60, 70, 80,000 to afford $1 million life insurance policy that could benefit their families. At least that's how it sounds. And with that being said, there are people acquiring it through that. There are people receiving IRAs being transferred over to them, right? There's people that have 401ks. You mentioned what the IRA stands for. I primarily know what the acronym is. I don't remember what the actual acronym breakdown is, but nonetheless, there's people who have stocks and have businesses, and they have these things that they worked really hard. There's guys like this who have 500 million and frankly are going to have kids and hand those things down. But it's not just the business. It's not just this savings. There's also those investments and assets, as you referred to them earlier, that can be handed down. Are there any common patterns in there? Because I know that they also say a lot of people think that you're going to get rich off of hitting one, being early to Apple, but it's really playing the long game when it comes.
It is, yes. Okay, you hit the nail on the head with that. I feel like sometimes I'm like the keeper of the secrets because I didn't really learn or understand this or see it until I came into this space and received the context. But it is not about timing the market. It's about time in the market. The longer you're in the market, it is a slow growth play. Wealth accumulation does not happen overnight, but that slow and steady pace, you will get there. And you can easily become a millionaire even with a modest salary. But it's how you spend money. It's how you save money. So it's not about how much you earn, it's about how much you keep.
Yep.
And how that money is invested. So like, meme stocks and everything that we were seeing with, GameStop and cryptocurrency, it's garnering a lot of attention. And I am so intrigued by cryptocurrency. I still don't quite understand it. I don't know if anybody really does, but everybody's kind of looking for that quick fix, that quick win. That is gambling. Okay. And that's fine. If you can afford to do that, that's completely fine. But I am a big proponent for staying in the long game, staying disciplined and slowly contributing and investing over time. And that compound growth, it will get you to where you want to be.
I hope you all are listening because I had to pull something up so I can show you. Let me show you something. This is the S&P. I'll give you the actual number so you can see what it looks like. This is a year. I'm showing you this because I really talked all last year about getting involved in the S&P. This is the index fund for you all who don't know. It has the top 500 companies and whatnot in there so you can invest in them and make it easier on growth and finance. If you would have invested last year, you could have made almost $900 today. Your bank is not going to do that. Just saving it. And
not right now. Yeah, not right now.
And I recognize that because every time I seen it growing, I was like, good God, I knew I should have put more money in there because I could have. Oh, it just hits different.
Could have, should have, would have.
Exactly. Do it now. And that's a perfect example because that's only 1 year. And when you look at the long term for these index funds, it's most likely on everyone's Apple phone or a lot of other people's phones. You can literally just go in there, click the 10-year button and see how it's continuously grown. Index fund, not the specific business like Apple. But yeah, well, Apple is constantly growing too, but that's different. Nonetheless, I definitely appreciate that. And I want to keep talking about that, but people need to pay you for a lot of your information. But before we get to one of my final questions related to what you do, let's get to the rapid question segment. I love this segment. I've created it. in the middle of this season, and it's been fun. I feel like pretty much all of my questions are easy, except one. And it's only because for some reason you all struggle recalling an answer for this question, but none of them are difficult. Keep them as concise as possible. All right.
Okay.
All right. Favorite sport?
Football.
Favorite book?
Untamed by Glennon Doyle. That's one that is really top of mind for me right now. Also Atomic Habits.
Okay. Favorite hobby?
I love to play golf. It's somewhat of a new hobby, but golf, I'd say.
Okay. If you could speak with anybody, dead or alive, not related to you, who would it be?
Michael Jackson.
Okay, that was a new one. All right. A song that represents, and this is the most difficult one for some reason. What is the song that you would consider a theme song for you at this moment?
Ooh. Okay. T.I., What You Know, was my track theme song. And I feel like it's just been my life theme song. Like I listen to it anytime I need to get pumped up. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to go with that because we are in Tokyo Olympics mode. Right. And I have been watching the track stars and I'm just like back in that mindset again. So What You Know, and I hope Allison Felix comes home with the goal. Yes,
absolutely. You love your company. We're not talking about switching companies. What's the dream position? And it's fine if you're currently in it. What is the dream position for you?
CEO.
Okay. Oh, so easy. I love it. What is the change you want to see?
In the world? Or
I got a second one. So you answered that first question how you want to answer it, and then there's a second one that recently got added because somebody answered the question history last time.
If we're talking like scope, if we're talking my industry or just work life in general, I just want to see more inclusiveness for women in having their personal lives integrated with work lives, just more balance with remote work. We can do it. We've proven we can do it. Most companies have been beating their earnings. We're more productive, clearly. Mm-hmm. I just want to see more companies shift to that like cultural expectation of, hey, if Bree needs a day to work remote and, drop her kids off to soccer practice or throw a load of laundry in, like that might make me more impactful in my career to have that leeway.
Okay. Well, that was the second question. So we're going to make the first question the second question now. So what's the change you want to see in the world?
Wow, that's a big question.
I mean, it's like this.
So I recently listened to a podcast related to how Elon Musk thinks, and I'm so fascinated by that man. And he is a positive sum thinker. So what that means is basically we don't have to all be competing against each other. Actually, if we're all sort of connected in some way and amplifying and elevating each other, the world is a better place because of that competition, not for one person, monopolizing the market. So basically he gave up his copyrights with Tesla and said, I don't want to be the hoarder of the information. I want to promote competition because that makes the world a better place. And so if I could make any changes to the way we look at capitalism, it would be that. It would be like, there's enough to go around. Like, let's not all compete against each other. Let's create a community to kind of continue this elevation. And of course, make more money in the meantime, but it doesn't have to be you versus me, right?
Exactly. Exactly. And that's kind of, I hope that people get that from anything, because everyone always thinks there's such a little bit of this and so few jobs. It's like, no, there's something specifically for you. I would love to own a Corvette. Everybody doesn't want a Corvette. So just because this guy's driving down the street in a Corvette doesn't mean he took mine. I can go buy a Corvette.
Amen.
Yeah. Well, last question is, what is your why?
Related to career or in general? Well, here's how I'll answer
what is
it.
Bree's why?
I'm gonna impact. I want to have an impact. And I can't tell you exactly like what that means. I just know I've recently done some coaching sessions and have honed in on like what's my why and how that mission ties in personally and professionally. I want to have a meaningful impact on the people and community around me. I can't tell you, specifically how that translates to my work, but my why is impact.
Okay. Well, that was the rapid questions. I appreciate that. And since we're hitting the tail end, I want to ask a question I think is valuable based off of what you have mentioned today, which is, what would be your pitch? And I know I'm putting you on the spot, but you brought this to my attention, so I'm going to ask it. What would be your pitch to a young lady out there with the skills to do what you do, to go ahead and become a financial advisor, wealth manager, the next Bree?
So I am financially motivated. It's not my focal point, but I did want to go into a career where there was upside. And I would tell them that the financial upside really is truly unlimited as it relates to being an advisor, whether you own your own firm or whether you work for a large institution. I would also say there is work-life integration and a lot of flexibility to do the things you need to do personally and also kind of meet your clients' expectations professionally. And it's the community piece. I think as any professional, I don't care what industry you're in, you should have some type of passion pillar for how am I involved in the community outside of work. And that is the fulfilling piece. And you can involve your family in that. I just think when I look at holistically everything that I do with clients and having an impact for their lives, their kids' lives, and being involved in the community and having work-life balance and having financial rewards, what more would I want? And so I think that could be appealing to other women as well.
Okay. All right. What is something that you would tell the younger version of you that would allow her to be more successful at a faster rate?
Delegate, ask for help.
Nice. Touche.
I do not do well at asking for help. I'm starting to be better, but yeah, I've put in a lot of hours just making sure that it's done and done perfectly, and it doesn't have to be perfect.
Yep. All right. Well, we covered a lot, but there may be something that you wanted to share coming into this. So we'd love for you to share any takeaways, anything that you want to allow people to know. I know business-wise, you may have a parent listening to this with their kid or with one of their peers that may want to reach out to you for wealth management. I would love for you to go ahead and just share whatever you would like at this moment.
I just think wealth management is subjective in the sense that it's different. It's a different approach for everyone. There's no like one path to get you to where you want to go. So it's really important as you're working with a team to be honest about what your short-term and long-term goals are so they can help you get there. And if you're not working with a team, hire professionals to help take some of that burden off of your plate, because one thing we don't get back is time. And I work with a lot of really, really successful people, and they just don't have enough time to be doing this for themselves. They're very smart, but they don't necessarily know wealth management and finance. And so they outsource it to me and my team. And so I just encourage people to take that off of their plate, free up some time, and hire a professional team that you feel safe with. I think that's really important. I do want to ask you one question in closing.
Okay.
What does wealth mean to you? I ask this to every one of my clients.
That's beautiful. I actually recently asked one of my friends, and they turned around and asked me the question, so I have an answer. Wealth for me, it's levels to it. So the first thing is to be free. And that's not just, we're not talking about just finance. We're talking about the ability to go into, for me, I want to be able to travel where I want to go. I want to eat whatever I want to eat. I want to do what I want to do. And I want to be able to relax. I want to be able to think about whatever I want to think about in that moment and be able to be present. I love thinking about the future, but I want to be able to be present because I'm not stressed thinking about the future. Now, that's frankly very bare minimum. That's not really wealth. I recognize that. But it's also being able to hand that down to my child, hand it down to my family in order for them to be able to live the most fulfilling lives, for them to be able to do whatever they want to do without actually ever having to think about how am I going to make $1. I mean, yes, it can absolutely make $1 by doing it, but they don't even have to think. Like, if you, I can't even fathom, but I'm trying to right now. And this is a part of the idea of wealth for me, is to be able to create an existence for my family in which you're not trying to figure out how am I going to get paid or ways to get paid. Instead, you're trying to figure out what is the life that I genuinely want to live that's going to be valuable. And I don't have to think about money. It's going to probably produce money, but you don't have to think about that. And that allows you to go into different places like Elon and Bezos, because it's like, hey, you know what? I want to have SpaceX too. I want to have this. I want to have a car that doesn't require gas, even though it's going to make everybody angry because because they run off gas on everything. And I want to be ahead of the game, and I can now claim that it's to be green. Not saying it's not to be green for him. I'm just saying that there's levels to this whole conversation in which he's being able to be free to think beyond certain things because he has certain things. Now, he's had a lot of struggles, he had a lot of work, and he has one of the most ridiculous schedules where he sleeps in his factory and plans out things, and I respect all of that. But there's levels to it, and that's my answer.
And it's I think the tie-in here is that wealth doesn't translate to money. And really, for most people, it doesn't translate to money. Mm-hmm. It's about flexibility, freedom. And for you just prove that in your answer. So I appreciate you answering that. And I actually completely agree with your sentiment.
Oh, I absolutely love giving back to those without. One of the initiatives that I personally want to do is have care packages for homeless people that we see around the city and be able to provide that to them. That's something I am currently working on, and we'll share more information so people can assist. I'm not going to be one of those people.
Let's get our Sea Change class in on that. Come on.
Okay, we'll do.
Let's go. We did those backpacks during COVID. I think we filled 300 backpacks. I mean, we have helpers. Just tap into them.
Touche, but that's definitely something that's really important to me. It means a whole lot to me, is to be able to give back to people who are in tough times and figuring out a way to help them be better. And that's my answer.
Love it.
Cool. There's a pause there. I recognize I missed something before I get ready to do my takeaway, and I almost slipped. And we can do this as fast as possible if you want to. That's the salaries.
I know. You know what? I was thinking that because there are so many layers in my space, I'd almost rather not go there, because literally it can be, I don't know. It's up to you. It can be anything from 50,000 starting up to, over $1 million. And it's just such a wide.
But that's what I want. I knew
Okay.
what I was getting into. I knew what I was getting into.
Okay.
So your first job, the accounting position, what was that entry level salary and what were you paid over that year?
So I believe my offer letter out of my MBA was 50,000. And it may even have been like 47 or 48,000 with opportunity for some bonus.
Okay.
And profit sharing. So it was not ideal, but for someone coming out of school, it was very exciting to receive that
bad.
paycheck.
Yeah. Okay. And you switched positions once you wanted to pivot. And when you did that, what did you switch over for financially? Because I know you've been in this role for a while now. So when you first entered into wealth management, what was that first check like? What was that first year salary like?
So it was actually like in alignment, a little bit higher than what I was making as an accountant, because I didn't have a ton of experience under my belt at that point. But there was higher upside as it related to incentive comp, which was really just bonus compensation. And my first and second year, that incentive comp, I more than doubled my salary. So that was where I was able to see, oh, okay, like harder you work, the more money you make. There's some financial upside here. So that was an interesting shift financially.
Is this referring to, just for clarity, so people understand how you're paid, is this referring to the money that's made for your client? Is this a salary-based situation? Is this?
There are two components. When I was a private banker, there were two components. It was a salary plus incentive comp, and it was based on new business received from clients, existing clients, or new clients. That allowed me to really accelerate my income. And then in moving from a private banker to an advisor, there's a third component there. So you have a salary, at least at my firm, you have a salary, you have incentive compensation, same as what I just discussed. And then you have trail compensation, which basically means any investments that you manage for a client, so long as they keep their assets with you, you continue to get trailing pay on that every year as long as their assets are still here. So if they move their assets outside of the firm, you lose that compensation. So you're incented to not only bring on new business, but really pay attention to and maintain your existing clients as well.
Okay. All right. Well, I want to be clear, because there are levels to this whole conversation about salary. I know that based off of how you get paid. Do you have an idea what the average salary of a person that's a wealth advisor is, especially in your industry?
So I know that it's a 6-figure compensation for a salary on average with a wealth management advisor title. And so
that's the salary. That's not the bonuses and everything else. That's just the salary.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So most salaries.
Also, is this because you work for a corporate organization?
Is the salary average because I work for a corporate organization?
Yeah, because it's the actual size of the company, or is it the actual?
No, I think it's industry based, and it's going to vary a little bit, but I would say that base salary for someone with an advisor title is going to be 6 figures. Now, some firms do it a little differently, where if you're kind of starting your own firm within their institution, then there's not really a base salary. It's just, you make what you hunt, you make what you earn.
Yes.
But most banks and larger institutions are structured in the way that it's a base salary. There's bonus compensation, there are stock awards, and there's the trail compensation. So it can become very attractive as you grow your business.
Okay. Well, it sounds like there's a common thing that you can get paid by the things that are trailing, as you mentioned, the assets that are staying around, but you can also have a salary. So this is a type of situation where you can have a salary and great bonuses at the same time, so you can get compensated well. The last thing is, I recognize that wealth advisors are like salesmen. Not saying you're a salesman, I'm saying in the sense that you really don't have to have a cap on what you get paid. So can you briefly speak to how one could, in theory, make $500,000 in a year? What it would take?
Well, it would certainly take the time frame to get to a point where you have enough clients that your trailing pay and your bonus pay is ramping up. And so that it really does take time to get there, time, resources, and I'd say a lot of internal support to get to that point, but it is not uncommon, to make that type of money and even north of that, as you gain experience in your career. And a lot of it is going out hunting, finding new business, maintaining existing clients, making sure that they're happy and that they're staying, and finding ways to kind of foster your existing clients for new opportunities. It really is. And there are a lot of advisors who hate the word sales. We're not supposed to be in a sales role. We're more advisory based, consultative. But you're absolutely right. The way we get paid is we are revenue generating. We are in essentially a sales role. And so you get paid accordingly, because it's not easy. There are revenue goals. You have to, at least at our firm, you have to bring in so much new business in order to get paid, right? So there's a hurdle there. In order to get that bonus, you got to bring in a certain amount. And so what I would say is it's not easy, but you get the experience, you learn how it's done, and it happens. It's kind of, if you're doing the right things, it all falls into place.
Okay. All right. And now, not now.
Like a show host.
I know. So thank you for giving me some of your takeaways. My takeaway is be willing to pivot. What I've heard from you today is be willing to pivot. Learn what makes you uncomfortable, what you like, and be willing to pivot. And the importance of this is because of the fact that you mentioned your education and you did all that work, and you could have easily sucked it up and stayed in a row just because you did do all those years in school for a position that you acquired. And it's like, no, this isn't making me happy. I want to know who I am. And you can, in the process, live a great life, be happy with it, get paid well, and figure out where your true direction is if you're willing to pivot. Do not be stubborn in life because you get one of these. So you need to be maximizing on it, not just living it like you're going to die tomorrow. And the other thing is, I appreciated the conversation, and I feel like people need to hear this, is finding a profession that is recession proof. There's things that are out there that are always going to be needed, like a janitorial company. Need people sleep on that. But guess what? That building downtown next to your house or wherever, it needs to be clean. And there's going to be a business like that. The accounting firm, every year there's a business, and every business needs an accountant. So that work is always going to be there. There's people who have businesses, they're always going to need a wealth advisor to help them know how to manage their money properly, accordingly. And so I definitely appreciate that. And I'm really excited to learn in the comment section from our audience what they gathered from this conversation. So if you all have any questions, any feedback, any thoughts, we'd love to hear it. Might be able to share this with Brie if Brie isn't reading them on her own. So like that, you all know how it goes. Two of these. Thanks, Brie.
Thank you so much.